Welcome to the night show with Dave Solberg. It's just been that kind of a week so far. We had all kinds of electrical glitches and stuff. So I am now got my questions are up, and I've got my cameraman excuse me, Angie. She doesn't like it when I call her that. And so I don't care. But so welcome to our live question and answer RV Lifestyle and Repair Club. My name is Dave Solberg, and we have had quite a few weeks here. Had a show in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it was very, very well attended. We had Ford did a live driving and towing class there. Ford Corporate, they had a seminar 3 times a day. They had a 1-hour seminar, and then they had 10 Ford F-150s and 10 trailers, travel trailers outside, and they did live hooking up, backing up, driving, right-hand turns. Great program, absolutely fantastic, and I hope they continue that with more shows down the road, because the people loved it, and it's something that's really needed. You don't see that at shows, mostly because of the logistics of getting units there and parking lots and stuff. And usually dealers are very, very busy. It's very hard to get that hands-on type stuff. So congratulations to Ford. Really appreciate them joining us there. And like I say, hope they will do it again. I've got another show coming up in October. For anybody that's out in the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina area, join me down there. We've got 3 days of seminars going all day long. I've got probably about 6 to 8 seminars a day and a Q&A at the end of it. It is October, I believe, the 18th, the third weekend out there. So join me if you can. Now we have some questions that have come in, and I've got the first one is from Rick. When turning on the hot water tank, the pilot light stays on for 10 seconds, plus or minus, and then goes out for 20 seconds, then on for 10 seconds. It's a Class C Mini, Winnebago Mini Winnie. So you've got a Class C, and I'm pretty sure that you've got the Suburban, because Winnebago uses mostly Suburban, no anode rod in that at all. And the first thing is we always call it a water heater, and that usually the hot water tank, that's okay. So some people call it the hot water heater. That's sometimes a pet peeve of mine. But the pilot light stays on for about 10 seconds. Now, that one should have a DSI. It's called direct spark ignition. I don't know if your water heater has a 120 volt option as well as the propane. If you have a flame coming on for about 10 seconds, and I'm pretty sure that Mini Winnie has what I said, DSI, direct spark ignition. So that means that there's no pilot light as such. It will spark and the flame will come on. And so if you're saying that the flame comes on for about 10 seconds or so and then goes off, so somewhere we've got an issue with the first thing I would do is plug it in. If you're boondocking and you're trying to run off the batteries, the number one issue with most of the propane stuff is low batteries or sulfated batteries. And people say, oh, no, my batteries are good. I charged them up. I know they're good. If they're sulfated, they will drop like a rock when that surface charge is on there, and you're trying to run something like this. Even something as minor as this, just lighting a fuse the flame. I would plug the unit in, make sure that you've got your converter is on, make sure you've got 13.2 at your batteries. When you plug that unit in, that converter will automatically do 13.6 if batteries are low, 13.2 when the batteries get up to 12.6. That way you guarantee it's not the battery. That's the first thing I would, most common denominator, isolate that fact. If you have a 120 volt option, run it on 120 and see does it work on the 120 side and not on the LP side. Then you're isolating that it's something in the LP system. So now the way your water heater works, and we've got one up on the shelf up here. Angie, if you want to go over to that, and I'll just do a real quick. So this is normally where our gas valve is going to come in right here, or a gas line. This is our gas valve. And when the temperature, so you've got a thermostat in here, and it's set at, I believe it's 140 degrees. And so when the temperature in this drops down to a certain point, or you start it up for the very first time, it's going to say, okay, I need heat. It's going to come down here. It's going to try and spark in here. So it's going to open the gas valve. It will spark, ignite here. If you're saying that the flame is starting here, there is no pilot light, but the flame is starting and it's going for 10 seconds, then it's shutting down, then the first thing that I would look for, plug it in. If I have enough 12 volt, the next thing is probably somewhere in your emergency cutoff or your thermostat here. You know, do you have a fuse link? Is it older? Let's see, you said it was a, okay, you didn't say what model year it was. They've changed a little bit where sometimes they had a reset in here. This one you see where there's a little fusible link that's in here. But there is a thermocoupler that's in the back here, which could also be the issue. And what that does is when your flame is going, it hits that thermocoupler and it creates a closed circuit, which means it's telling the module board that, yes, I have flame, keep it going. And so what it will tell you is that I have flame, keep the gas valve open, keep gas going, because you don't want gas to keep going if I don't have a flame, if it's not working. You know, the other thing is do you have any kind of obstruction in that tube, which is your burner assembly, and it mixes with air. So if you got a poor mixture in there, you've got a low regulator in your LP. So there's several things. You need to check the water column pressure of your regulator. So what are you getting for LP to that system? You know, then you look at the thermocoupler. Is that flame getting far enough that it's hitting that thermocoupler? Because it'll start, but if it doesn't get up there in a certain amount of time, it's going to go, uh-oh, I don't have it. And it's going to stop. And it will usually only try it for 3 times. So you didn't say how many times it was going, but a lot of times something like that is a little more than just a normal DIY, because you've got to be able to check the pressure of the LP. One thing you can do is you should have a 3-burner range in the front of your rig, or in the front, excuse me, inside your rig. Turn 1 burner on, you should have a nice blue flame. Turn a 2nd burner on, you should have a nice blue flame without it jumping, you know, so you're adding more demand from that LP. And then do the 3rd one, and if it's jumping around, if it's orange, then your regulator is not keeping up. You know, that's the other thing is a lot of, I call them gremlins. So let's say your water heater is trying to start, and you can't, this is happening. You take it into the dealership, and the dealer plugs it into a nice controlled area, and everything else is off. And they start it up. Wow, works fine. You take it back out, and sure enough, it does it again. Well, you don't know, is the refrigerator running on LP? Is it drawing 12 volt power? Is it drawing LP, and that regulator can't keep up? So that's the other thing. Shut everything else off. Does it work with all your other LP appliances off? Does it work plugged in? You know, isolate where those, you know, gremlins might be at that are pulling, you know, either 12 volt power or LP pressure off of that. So also when that flame does start, when you say the pilot light, is it a nice blue light? If it's orange and if it's dancing around, then chances are that burner assembly it's got spider webs, mud daubers. It's got little vents that might need to be adjusted. Where are you at altitude-wise? You know, if you're high up in the mountains, you're going to have a totally different air ratio to gas because of the thinner air, and it might be an orifice thing that's up in there. So there's a lot of things that can come into effect in something like that. So Rick just said, oh, so he did come back and say 2017 Winnebago Class C motorhome. Sorry about that. So I would probably say that you might still have the old resets. I don't know exactly when they traded over. That's right at about the time there were some changes. Terry says, hi, Dave. I have a 2023 Northwood Nash 24M. When I turn on the water heater in the electric mode, the water is not as hot as the gas mode. Your thoughts? I watch your live event each month and truly get very good information. So if you get good hot water out of the LP mode on the side of it, on that's mode, and you're not getting it off the 120 volt side, then most likely what's happening is your heating element is going weak. And if you've ever started it, so in a unit like this, I don't believe this is just a traditional one, but so in a unit that has the 120 volt, you will have in the drain plug area, you will have a heating element that is just a circled rod. And if you ever start that up, so everything else is good. If it's working on LP, everything else is good. You can ohm out that rod. You'll see two probes, I believe, coming to that knuckle that rod is in, or the heating element. So it's basically a very long shaped, U-shaped kind of a rod. It's a heating element. If you've ever started that unit up without water in it, that heating element will burn out really fast. And so I would say that that's probably the case. You should be able to look into your service manual and ohm that out. It's a pretty easy swap out. Get the tool that's designed for it, and you should be able to swap that out. Okay, Alan has a 2020 Norcold. It's a 1210. I'm adding fans to the refrigerator and needed to know what and where the best 12 volt wires to connect to. So what Alan's trying to do is he's trying to get some better air circulation, and there's a variety of different places that you can add fans to. So I'm not sure exactly where he is talking about. If you're looking at adding fans outside on the cooling unit side of it, that's where you would have to get them up above the evaporator coils. You don't want them down below. You'd have to get them up towards the top. That's a little harder to find a 12 volt source. If you're looking to add fans on the inside, now there's a couple new products. I think it's JD refrigeration or JP refrigeration. There are some evaporator fin fans that have been a big hit on some of the questions I get with RV travel. And those go right inside. You open the compartment door, you see the fins on the back side of it. They hook right to that side of it. And to get your 12 volt source, you can either go out through the back. Through there, you will have a drip hole for your condensation hose, and you could go out the back and you can get 12 volt from the back side of your refrigerator on the bottom of it, or you could go inside and get it from the overhead light that is in there. As long as you go on the side before the switch, you should be able to do that. So if you're going inside there, outside you're going to have to go down and find something down on your a 12 volt source that's coming in to your module board. Eric has an absorption type refrigerator, and he's been trying to start it from non-use position using 12 volt DC and 100 volt AC. The system at the rear of the unit heats up. It's warm, hot to the touch, but no real cooling seems to happen even after 24 hours of trying. So there's a lot more to this. If it's an absorption type refrigerator, number one, I don't know how you're trying to use it from a 12 volt DC side. You don't give me a model year, or if it's a Norcold, a Dometic, a Furrion. I'm assuming it's a Norcold or Dometics, and that's going to run off a 120 volt power heating element on the side of the burner assembly, or it's going to run off a flame on LP, doing the same thing, heating it. Now, when you say that it heats up and it's warm to the touch, that isn't even close to heating up. If that's heating up to the proper temperature, you will not be able to touch that without burning your fingertips. It's going to run into the 200 degree range. And so what's supposed to be happening is that on 12 volt, on 120 volt or on LP, you've got a heat source, the heating element, the flame. You have a rich vessel, rich liquid vessel, it's called. It's got ammonium, hydrogen, chromium sulfate, and water. And those four are heated by that heat source until they become a vapor, and they're supposed to go up the flue. So that is hot, hot, hot stuff. So when you're touching it to that point, my thought on this is that if it's not working on either 120 or on LP and 12 volt, unless it's a really old one that has the 12 volts never been sufficient anyway. So I kind of throw that one out. But, the first thing I would look at is, I'd say you're probably plugged in if you're trying on 120 volt AC, and you're not getting, it's hard to kind of walk through on both sides if it's doing this, if that's not heating up. What I would do is I would do a hard test on this thing. And I believe we have a video on the inside of it. So you got something wrong with your module board or with your thermistor, not saying it's not cold enough. If you check inside, obviously if it hasn't been starting, the thermistor isn't encased in ice or frost, but it might not be effective. So what I would do is I would go in and I would take, since you've got a 120 volt heating element, take those wires, cut them, put on a plug-in, and plug that heating element in directly into a 120 volt source. You're bypassing everything else. You're bypassing the eyebrow board. You're bypassing the module board that's on the back of the refrigerator, and it should do a hard cold, let it go for 24 hours. And if that doesn't go cold, then you've got a cooling unit issue. My thought is that it will go cold. So then you're going to have to start backtracking and looking at the module board that's in the back vent area. It's a black box. Take that out. Do I have 12 volt coming in to that? Do I have 120 volt coming in? You can check your heating element. Very seldom do you have both LP and 120 not working on that mode. It's something else, module board or the eyebrow board on the inside. So you're going to have to do some walking through with that. We do have here for the free download. Let's see if we got it up on the front. There is how to buy a used RV. Sign up for the free newsletter and receive a digital download on how to buy a used RV. And we'll go back down to Eric. We just talked about that. And there it is. If you look through the questions on how to buy used RV repair. Rhonda says, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Rhonda. I have a 2000 National RV Tradewinds motorhome. It's Class A. What replacement screws do you suggest on the exterior? I want to replace so many of the rusted out screws on the roof and some of them on the coach. National RV was out in Paris, California, and I did a lot of videos for them back in 1998, 99, 2000. Unfortunately, they went out of business. Great motorhome, great company. However, I know that being out in California wasn't subjected to a lot of the elements that you see in some of the other places. So what I would recommend is to replace the screws with something that's called stall guard. That's what Winnebago uses. It's a coated screw that is resistant to salt in the air from the coasts, from out in the Midwest in the wintertime when you get that, some of the corrosion and stuff. I would imagine you're probably seeing a lot of them rusted. You're going to have a tough time, I think, getting some of those out. They may bust out on you, so I would use some pretty good PB Blaster and a few other things and be very careful with it. The other thing you might want to do is if they're just rusty, go in and take a little bit of there's a couple products here, Corrosion XD and Corrosion X. These are two really good rust and corrosion killers. So they go in and just douse them really good with that stuff, because if it's just a rust, it might just be a surface rust, and you can do that and then polish them up. And then I would go back over with some kind of a self-leveling lap sealant like a Dicor, or even maybe an RV Roof Magic or something like that. So that's something that I would recommend doing. If you're going to replace them, you want to try a stall guard coated screw, and that's the best one to use. Winnebago's been using them for years. Okay, we have Jack says, how often should I check and replace seals around windows and doors? So windows, you're typically going to have what's called butyl tape, and it's just kind of a putty-like tape that's only about 3/4 to an inch wide and maybe an 1/8 inch, and they put that around and then they sandwich the windows into it. And so, you know, there's not a lot you have to do with that other than to just kind of check. Sometimes when it squeezes, they have a tendency to pinch a little bit of that out. Now, some companies will put silicone around that and make it a cap seal. You know, I think just kind of visually inspect it twice a year. And if you start to see it cracking, you know, you can get a butyl silicone type thing that will help. So you go in, you cut out whatever's cracking, then they add just a little bit more of that butyl into it. I think one of the other things that I would highly recommend is to just keep an eye on the actual rubber molding where the glass is at, not the frame behind the window, but where the glass is. That starts to dry out and it'll start to shrink and it'll pull away. So what I recommend with that is to use a UV protection. And I don't have the one with me here. I think it's out in our trailer. 303 protectant is the best, and it's a great UV protection. Helps keep that rubber pliable. Same thing with the doors. You're going to have a rubber gasket around that door. You will probably also have the butyl tape around the door frame itself. So that would be something that I would check. You can put silicone around that butyl. The problem with doing that is that the butyl really should seal that well enough, and the silicone added to it just gets dirty. It just, you know, collects dust and grit, and it just looks bad most of the time. Alan says, again with the 2020 Norcold clarifications, I'm adding both fans inside and upper vent on the slide. Okay. How do I tell what wires to tie into in the back of the refrigerator? So he's going to do the inside fans, and then he's got his units in the slide room. So he is going to put a fan on the upper side of the vent in there. So you should have access to get down towards the bottom. And then basically what I would do is just take a typical multimeter like this. You can also do just a quickie like this one here, find a ground source. And do I have a battery? This one's probably, I don't know how good this one is. It's been here a while, but you find a ground source somewhere on the back of that refrigerator, and then you should be able to go in. Yeah, and this one's dead as a doornail, or let's test it with this just to find out for sure. It's been sitting there a long time. Yeah, it's only showing 1 volt. So let's try something else here. So this is our WFCO, WFCO. And I am going to isolate those, and we'll plug this in. Now this is going to give us a 12-volt source. And I'm going to do this again. We'll cheat. We'll give ourselves a... All right, so I'm going to hook this there. Now we should have there we go. All right, let me get this not so. So before he had like 1.1 volt, and that's not enough to light anything up. But you'll see here, like I said before, if your battery is completely dead and you hook up, you should be seeing 13.14 out of this one. Some of the other ones should be doing 13.6. And then, like I say, on the back side of your refrigerator, let's just go in and find a ground source. And that's why this isn't working. Our light is burnt out. I'm not sure how to. That should give us a light source, and it does not. So it's telling me that this thing is not working, and it's time for a new one. So let's take that out. And that will be a project for later on. And maybe it's not a project at all. A new bulb will probably cost more than the price of a new tester. That's why I like these better. They're very dependable. You should be able to either get a multimeter and find a 12-volt source, or take a working test light and be able to find that. All right, so let's go back up to questions. Okay, so Don says, I have a 2004 Newmar Country Star motorhome. Sometimes when I have most of the lights on, the AC's running in the hot summer, I will get a pulsating in the lights. Wondering, is this a converter issue? Any thoughts? So it kind of depends on, first of all, 2004 Newmar. I would imagine that you didn't have LED lights in that to start with, and I don't know if you do now, if they've been swapped out. They could be incandescent, they could be halogen, or they could be LED. If they are LED, then a lot of times your Newmar typically has an inverter that is used as a charger on the larger ones. And so sometimes when you start getting a high amp draw on the AC, when the air conditioner is running, and so your 120 volt system, the inverter is trying to charge, but it's chattering. And I've heard of this happening, several other times when, people are trying to do that. One of the things that you want to watch and see, is it doing it during startup? Is it doing it all the time? Is it just doing it when the air compressor is running, or the compressor is running on the air conditioner? And it might be that it could possibly be inexpensive lights as well. So there's some interference that's causing that. Normally not LED. Okay, so then you've got either halogens, which I'm assuming with the 2004 Newmar, probably not the old incandescent ones like we saw for years and years. But those halogens just are not a smooth running one. So I would say you're probably more looking at what that inverter is doing. And I'm assuming, again, that your inverter is a larger 2,000 watt inverter that is also a converter / charger. If not, then I would start looking at what you have for it. Okay, and that probably will help you isolate where that's coming from. And I would also look at what lights. That's the thing that when I tell people about troubleshooting is, don't be generic on it doesn't work. It's not cooling. You know, here, what lights are flickering? You know, are they all the lights? You know, have you tested the bedroom? Because all your lights are working on 12 volts. So somewhere in that 12 volt system, you've got something that's creating some interference. Is it all the lights going all the way through? Then it's probably something in the inverter that's trying, or the converter, whatever version you have, is doing something to the batteries. And you know, that is there anything else on that's running as well? It's like 120 volt on the refrigerator. You know, if you start shutting some things off, does it make a difference? You know, so is there an amp draw? Look at your, if you have a energy management system, how many amps are you drawing in there? What is the voltage that is coming into your RV? So there's so many things that you can, you know, start walking through and just document it. It's like, okay, all right, I see it's just in here. Okay, I can isolate it to here. Or if it's the whole thing, you know, it could also be weak batteries. As the batteries start to get down and they get to charging, and, you know, so there's just a lot of things that without being able to get in and put a tester on it, sometimes it's hard to tell that stuff. And so Alan says, thank you, Dave. I have both the tester with the light and a multimeter. So that's good. And you should be able to find a 12 volt source. A lot of times like these here, you know, they'll even be color coded, which I'll back that up a little bit. I have found that you can't always trust the color. Go in and use a multimeter. I know Winnebago uses green and purple for positive and negative in some of the lights. So it's not always like you would see in a typical red is positive, black is negative, in the RVs. And so I don't see any other questions here. So we're going to go through a couple things that we have found. One of the things that we just recently ran into, and we did a gold version on it here, earlier today, is a lot of your electrical codes around the country are requiring a ground fault circuit interrupter, actual circuit breaker, not just the outlet that you see. And anything in Iowa now that is a storage facility with a closed door, if you put 30 or 50 amp in, you have to have a GFCI like this versus the typical 50 amp circuit breaker that we've seen for years and years and years. And now I've got the guy we rent from here has renovated the back shop and made storage bays out of for big motorhomes, 40 feet wide by 75 feet long, and put in 50 amp service. And so the electricians came in and wired it, and I got a call and he says, one of the guys, the first guy who came in with a motorhome, little 30 amp, it's tripping the circuit breaker. It's like, okay. And he says, he's got 30 amps. He's got the, where is it? This is actually the one he has, surge guard protector. And it shows line 1 has got 124 volts in it. And he's got a reducer because he's only got a 30 amp motorhome. And line 1 has 124 volts and only 5 amp draw. So it shouldn't be tripping the breaker. And so I got the call, and the first thing I did was I talked with the electrician, or I talked with the owner of the building. He said, well, the electrical inspector said that obviously something in the motorhome, the positive or the neutral and the ground of the 12 volt house system is touching somewhere, and you're going to have to find that and isolate it because it's sending back. And it's like, no, the 12 volt system has positive and negative. Neutrals are only in the 120 volt circuit, designed to bring stray voltage back. And the 12 volt system does not interact with the 120 volt in any way other than the converter charging the battery. So that can't be the issue. So I called, went in contact with Mike Sokol, who is the guru at electrical on RVs and just about everything. And Mike says, you're seeing this more often with campgrounds. They're not required by campgrounds at this point yet. But a lot of electricians that come in and code inspectors are interpreting what they feel, and they're requiring it. And it's not required in the campground, just in a storage facility. This happens to be the one that's in the facility that we have. a sample of one in here. So the first thing I did is I contacted Winnebago, and my contact there said, well, the first thing we always tell people is if that is over 5 years old, get rid of it. Get a new one, because that's going to interact. You're going to get some leakage out of that. It's just not going to play nice with it. The second thing we found is that we had the LP leak detector was beeping tremendously because the circuit breaker had gone off and the batteries went dead overnight. So we had weak batteries. And once we got the batteries charged up, this was still beeping up to the point where it got fully charged. And so the other comment was, get rid of this if it's over 5 years old. These are only good, the sensors in them, for about 5 or 6 years. This is a 2015. So we got rid of that. We're going to replace the batteries. That's another issue. The batteries are sulfated, so they are dropping faster. The converter's kicking on and off more, so we're getting a lot of this feedback. And one of the things that we're also told is that appliances in RVs are not as efficient as they are at home. You will get a lot of leakage of voltage out of these systems, and some of them are even, the ground is bringing stuff back. So, a lot of these gremlins that caused it, what we ended up doing is we replaced this, got new batteries. We are going to check the water heater. Another issue could be that the heating element of the water heater has, gotten weak or has actually shorted out because they turned it on with no water in it. And if that's trying to start, most everything was shut off. But by shutting everything off inside, not allowing those appliances to leak stuff back, getting a better surge protector, a newer one. In fact, he said I wouldn't even put one on. If it's a dedicated circuit in a building that's wired and not ganged like an outside, you don't need that. It's already protected. And so, knock on wood, we have not had the circuit breaker trip since we did that stuff. And we haven't put new batteries in, but what we did is we shut everything off and put a dedicated battery charger onto the batteries. It was a battery minder. And so beware of those things when you come in to a storage facility that has one of these. You want to be prepared. All right, Alan says, one more thing if you have time. We do. I have a 2020 Grand Design reflection with electric stabilizers. They all 4 quit. So I would imagine with the 2020, I'm not sure exactly who they used. Lippert was one. Quickie was another one that was used for a while. Lippert bought Quickie. If I got a beeping sound going on. What was this? Okay. Just wanted to make sure my toast wasn't done or something. My timer. Oh, my cake. Remember when you used to you couldn't walk through the kitchen because the cake would drop in Mom's oven? Nobody does that anymore. And nobody waxes their kitchen floor. We could not walk into the kitchen because Mom had waxed the linoleum on the floor. Those were the days. So all 4 of your stabilizers have quit. And I guess you're going to have to get a multimeter out. You're going to have to check, because each one of those is going to have its own motor on the stabilizer. Chances of all 4 motors going bad at the same time is very, very slim. So I would start with, is your battery plugged in? Or excuse me, is your unit plugged in? And we keep going back to that. Don't rely on that house battery, especially on a trailer when you have probably one that's up on the front. And plug the unit in so that you got your converters doing 13.2 volts to the system in there. Then you got power, and then you'll have to find where is your control module. So somewhere behind the switch, you should have a control module that then sends power to all 4 of them. There might be a fuse there. Look in the fuse box in your distribution center. You should have 12-volt fuses like this, and one of those will be for your jacks. It may be tied to more stuff than that, but you should be able to find out where that's at. Is that fuse good? And the best thing to do is a non-conductor non-conductive test. I've been told by my, this is what it sounds like. Okay. I think, all right. And you can also see it goes to 0. So the best thing to do, rather than, going up in here and doing a live test on that stuff, just take the fuse out. It's very hard to tell. Now, newer models like this one, when that fuse is bad, that light will usually go on. You don't have that in every one of them, and you don't always want to make sure that, rely on that light. That's all you do. So now I know that fuse is good. I got the beeping sound, the tone, and the continuity of it is going. So we know that's good. Check that fuse and make sure, because they look good, but that doesn't always mean they are good. So find out where that's at. Then you're going to have to go to the module, check to make sure you got 12 volt to the module, wherever that's at. Inside that module, then there should be feeds that go out to each one of those. I'm assuming you have, and again, I'm not familiar with the Grand Design. That's what I was doing. I was touching. Maybe it was not. But I'm assuming there's 4 switches to each one of them. Unless it's one of the higher line models, then you'll have one that'll do 2 at a time, or maybe even an automatic leveling. Most of your electrics don't have automatic leveling. So pretty much 12 volt, 2 there, out to those jacks. And again, I doubt all 4 jacks have motor issues on the jack itself. We don't have any other questions that have come in. So let's take a look at what else did we do this last. Just tried a new product called RV Roof Magic in our last shooting session we did in August, I guess it was. And we've got this 1997 Forest River Salem that we've been working on for, I think, 45, 50 years now, it seems like. We call it the trailer from hell. But it had a TPO roof on the top of it. And there's a variety of different roof structures out there. And how you can tell if it is TPO versus any other product out there. Let me see if I can find my sample. Yes. So there's a variety of different roof materials, fiberglass, which I feel is the best, but you don't have to have that. The first generation that came out was called EPDM, and it was a rubber membrane, and it came in somewhere around the, I'd say 1987, 88 era. A lot of companies were using aluminum, some of them fiberglass, molded cap stuff, but aluminum was pretty standard. It would streak. It was in 4-foot sections, so it had a seam down the middle. It would pit. It was just, and then it got really expensive. So a lot of companies went to the rubber membrane that's been used in the commercial building application for years. And how you can tell it's EPDM is if you take the shroud of the roof vent off, you'll see some of this tucked into that opening. And if it's black on the backside, then it's EPDM, because EPDM always starts off as this black type of material. It can be seam welded, so forth, and then the color is added to it, so it'll chalk. The issue with the EPDM is that it would expand and contract a lot easier, or a lot more than some of the other materials when you have differences in temperature. 40-degree morning and a 70, 80-degree afternoon. This stuff would expand and contract, and we saw some issues with that. Some still use it. It's not a terrible product, but you do need to condition it at least twice a year, clean and condition it, and just watch, or areas, anything that's cut out inside. TPO then is going to have the same color on the back. EPDM, Dyflex calls their version of the solar white here, This happens to be Dicord Diflex, the ivory. So it's the same color on both sides. EPDM. I had a couple more here. There's most of these are the Dicord brand. There's a lot of new ones out. There's Alpha, Extreme Ply. They're calling this PVC, so forth. And the only thing you cannot put this Roof Magic on is the PVC product. It will not stay. I'm not sure exactly why, but check with their on their website. But so we had the TPO. We went up and used the fungicide to start with because you've got to get that mold spores out of there. The mold doesn't go into the actual material, but there's a lot of crevices you can see here that dust can get into, and that's what the mold goes into. So you really want to use a good fungicide to get that off of there. Now, one of the things that I have been a proponent of for years is Dawn dish soap. That was my go-to cleaner. And what I found out recently is that Dawn isn't necessarily the best thing. It's good for roof materials, the EPDM, TPOs, that kind of stuff. The challenge with Dawn dish soap is that it will take any kind of petroleum, oils, waxes, and so forth. And I ran into this the very first time. My wife got a new Audi car, and she got the ceramic treatment because I didn't want to fight about it. and very expensive treatment, but very nice. I was very impressed. Vince did an absolutely fantastic job. And then we asked him, so what should we clean this with? And it's got to be refreshed every month, every few weeks. And I said, well, I've always used Dawn dish soap. I have from the time I worked in a gas station in high school. And he said, I said, it works on ducks in Alaska, right? And he says, yeah, it takes oil off. So if you have a ceramic coating, if you have a wax coating, anything like that, Dawn dish soap will take away layer at a time of that stuff, where eventually it's gone. So he's put the ceramic treatment on, and about 8 months later, or a year later, somebody came back for their refresh to do that, and the whole thing was dull. And so he asked the guy, what do you use? He said, Dawn dish soap. He said, yeah, even though it's gentle on everything, it is designed to take oils, and it will take away the wax. It will take away the ceramic coating. So I've gone away from that. Meguiar's makes I think it's called a hybrid that is designed for ceramic coatings, but it's one of the best ones to use. I still like RV Roof Magic has this fungicide that is fantastic. So I treated that first with that. You just put a certain amount in water, brush it off, rinse it off really good. Make sure you're watering the sides down, because you're going to get some chalking that comes on it. Let it dry overnight, and then it's basically just an elastomeric coating, and I put it on with a paint roller and a stick. And what took the longest was just doing the edges with a brush. I didn't want it to drip over the sides, but I don't think I had to do that because the roof came to a fairly good point rather than a rounded, and it's thick enough so it won't run down the sides like I thought it would. But I was able to coat that. I think it took me less than an hour. I'm pretty sure with the roller stuff on it. And it is one of the best coatings. I've gone back a few times to take a look at it. Initially, it had some bubbles in it. And what happens is when it gets on top of this older EPDM TPO, it kind of heats up some of the adhesion and some of the chemical process in there, and you'll get some of this. But 3-4 days later, it all flattened out, and it is absolutely fantastic. So RV Roof Magic, I love the stuff, and it's been phenomenal. So did we get any other questions? We have not. And what else we got coming up? So we shot the video. We put in a new distribution center. That's coming out here fairly soon. One of the Progressive Dynamic ones we have. Thanks for Dennis from Progressive Dynamics on helping with the technical aspect of that. Put in a new battery. And right now I'm writing an article for CoachNet that we're talking about proper storage of batteries. And I think we've got just enough time to go through that. I get this question every fall, it comes in. So what do I need to do for storage? And one of the things that we talk about is batteries. Is flooded lead acid batteries really need to have the proper charge and storage, when otherwise they're going to sulfate. And you can't just run them out, leave it plugged in. Your converter, like I said before, is going to just run at a constant 13.2 volts. It does not break up sulfation. You need a multi-stage charger that does that. You don't want to be boiling those batteries when it's in storage. So in my opinion, the best thing to do with flooded lead acid batteries is to get a desulfation charger, portable charger like Battery Minder. I think DeWalt has one. There's several of them out there, not just a maintainer, not just a 2-amp trickle charge, but something that will sulfate those batteries, but desulfate them, but not boil them. You don't want to just leave them without any type of charge, because they will naturally drain down in probably 3 to 4 weeks. This LP leak detector will drain them down awfully fast. And then when they're drained down and they're in cold weather, first of all, they'll sulfate, but second of all, they can freeze. And then you've got ruined batteries. Make sure you take care of those. AGM batteries then are a little bit different. They don't sulfate as bad or as fast, but you do not want to let those set. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you have either take them out. That's the thing, is if you're going to be in a storage area where you don't have access to electricity, you can get a solar panel charger for it, or take the batteries out back to your garage and put them in. If you have AGM batteries, then you'll want to do the same thing. But you'll want to get a trickle charger, or a trickle charger. You don't have to get the desulfation thing, but you want to make sure that you keep them charged, or you bring them in and put them in a garage. If you have lithium iron phosphate batteries, then all you have to do is disconnect the negative cable on the post. Lithium ion will only lose about a 10% charge in over 6 months. So you don't want to try and charge them in cold weather unless it's got some kind of heater that's built into it. You don't need to take them out. You don't need to keep them plugged in all the time. Just unplug that negative cable and let them set. And so those are the things you can do to properly store your batteries. 'Cause we got winters coming along here fairly soon. This year is probably going to be pretty tough here in the Midwest. Last year we had virtually no snow, nice temperatures. I doubt that'll ever happen again in my lifetime. I wish it would, but I doubt it will. So with that, we don't have any other questions, it looks like. So we're gonna call it quits for this quarter. We are gonna do another one, I believe, October 10th. So join us. I appreciate everybody that came with us. Make sure you get the download. And thank you for joining us, and have a great rest of your week.